A Galaxy Torn Asunder. =RK=. Part 3. Senate Building. Coruscant. Every day since he was released from the hospital, Obi-Wan had to do the same useless thing, report in front of the Senate. They asked him the same questions and surprisingly expected different answers, while they kept his hands tied. It was frustrating. Infuriating really, and that was especially dangerous given the volatile state of the Force. My answer remains the same, Senator Mothma. Obi-Wan answered in cordial tone. Vale's fleet is still dark. While we've got 100 new rumors of their location, none have been confirmed. The answers of your remaining questions are unchanged. We do not know why he ordered Kamino bombarded. We do not know why the soldiers under his command, Corellians, Mandalorians and clones alike, obeyed. We have multiple theories. No proof to go on. At this moment we can't even confirm the status of Kamino. The system is on the far end of the galaxy in a region under separatist control. All we can say for sure is that the footage and sensor logs provided by the Confederacy appear genuine and not tampered with. Saying anything else would be baseless speculation. Kenobi explained calmly. For the 9th damn time. That wasn't what the Senate wanted to hear if their angry muttering and odd shouted accusations were anything to go by. They wanted someone to blame. A scapegoat to throw to the Krat hounds that was the media. Considering what was still happening with the clones, Obi-Wan wouldn't put it as impossible if they got rogue at Kamino too, even if that didn't explain the other people working with Vale. What was worse, Obi-Wan was actually tempted to offer Vale as a sacrifice. However, that wasn't exactly a simple proposition. Nowadays the man was a sovereign head of state among other things, which complicated the situation immensely even if he was guilty, which wasn't a guarantee. Considering what the clones were doing since Order 66 was given, Obi-Wan could actually imagine scenarios where Vale did indeed order Kamino bombed back to the Stone Age, with good reason too. However, he couldn't say so in front of the Senate. The situation with the clones was delicate enough without adding further complications. General Kenobi, are there any important changes in the strategic situation since yesterday's session? Bail Organa inquired after the other senators finally got themselves under control. None, Senator Organa. There's still heavy fighting in the eastern sectors of the Mid-Rim. The inner rim in the galactic east is currently secure. At this moment the Confederacy is unlikely to launch any more heavy offensives in the core, however they're still sending and raiding fleets to disrupt our commerce. Our scouts report that the Separatists are busy fortifying their conquests. Our projections are that they will use the coming months to consolidate the territory they gained in their offensive, secure their logistics and prepare the ground for a decisive offensive once their next major building cycle is complete. The longer we're forced to wait, the higher the price we'll need to pay to regain complete control of the core worlds. What are you waiting for? Someone shouted in the silence following Obi-Wan's answers. One of two things, Senator. Kenobi intoned without losing a beat. A new chancellor being elected and calling off Order 66 so the GAR could freely use our clone personnel in offensive operations, or for our new training programs to complete their current cycle and give us enough personnel so we could resume offensive operations. His words were met with resounding silence. Everyone knew that there were whole armies being trained, quite a lot of them too. These volunteers would be ready for deployment over the next few months. However, no one was looking forward for them joining the fray, for these were ordinary people. Republic citizens. Every one of them mattered. They were someone's sons and daughters, brothers, sisters, parents. They were real people, not just expendable clones. If, when the GAR was forced to rely primarily on their efforts and the coffins began coming back in a tide, there would be hell to pay. What about the traitors? The senator from Polani asked. Which traitors? The Jedi? The Cathar? Their other allies? Obi-Wan requested a clarification. All of them, came the answer. The Jedi remaining on Coruscant are either in custody and being investigated, they're being hunted down or dead. Somehow Obi-Wan managed to keep his tone light and conversational. He showed no outright sign that the inquiry was infuriating or of the dark side whispering how good would it feel to crush the damn useless fools. Kenobi looked around the chamber. About a third of it was empty, yet every single senator on Coruscant was in here. Well, with the exception of those arrested either for treason or thanks to Palpatine's evidence. For some reason Obi-Wan didn't doubt that there would be a lot more new faces in this building when the dust finally settled. As far as the Cathar are concerned, Their home world is in contested space. After they officially switched sides last week and joined the Separatists, we're in no position to directly assault them. In order to do so, we need to remove the Confederate presence from the other edges of the Mid-Rim in the Galactic East and secure Mandalore as a staging area. None of that is possible while the majority of the clones are locked in following Order 66. Obi-Wan explained. Here it comes again. Why no one knew about the contingency orders and their effects? Mothma was on the warpath again. I believe that files containing the contingency orders are available to members of the Senate upon request. How the clones would react once a contingency order was given, that I admit caught us all off guard. I believe that the representative from Kamino is better suited to answer such a question. I would like to know the answer too, Senator. Unfortunately, Kamino's senator wasn't interested in answering questions. Instead, if given the opportunity to speak, all that came from her mouth were demand for Vale and Holt's heads mounted on pikes in front of the Senate and for the Republic to be held accountable for the destruction of Kamino. Obi-Wan has been contemplating the wisdom of getting her arrested and into interrogation ever since he became aware of the debacle in progress that was Order 66. Only the lack of evidence and the shaky political situation held his hand so far. Well, there was the fear that she could implement some kind of contingency order if the Republic attempted to arrest her without due cause. However, that was increasingly unlikely as more and more time passed without new clone-related problems. =RK Ambassador Suite. Mandalorian Embassy. Coruscant. Bo-Katan sat dejectedly in her hover chair, trying to ignore the fact that without the life support systems in it she would be stuck in a hospital bed until all her operations could be completed. However, before that could happen she had to agree on the amount of cybernetic implants that would be put in her. Even the lightest option amounted to turning her into a cyborg. Bo closed her eyes and growled. Shattered or even pulverized ribs. Filleted internal organs which even Bacta couldn't fully heal. Spine snapped on multiple places. The list went on and on. The doctors told her it was a miracle she lived long enough to get to the operating room in the first place. Lucky. Bo-Katan laughed mirthlessly. She could remember dying twice. When she faced that damned Jedi. It was supposed to be glorious. A battle for the ages. Instead Windu crushed her. Made her feel weak. Useless. He still did. Thanks to that bastard she was a cripple. Pathetic. Bo shook in impotent fury and frustration. She had to become strong again. She had to be a worthy Mandalorian warrior. That was her dream and yet Windu crushed it so easily. Bo-Katan looked at the datapad in her lap and grimaced. She would get stronger. She would train to hunt down and kill Jedi. And she was going to track Windu and end him. A shacking hand, the only one that was currently working properly, picked up the datapad. Bo scrolled through the options until she reached those available only thanks to her brother-in-law's connections in Republic R&D. Project Rebirth. If she went with that option, Bo would be more machine than woman. Yet, it might be worth it in the end. She thought what her husband would think of it. She hoped Del-Qatar hadn't managed to get himself killed. Bo was fond of him. She even dreamed of him while in delirium after Windu crushed her. Decisions. =RK Interlude. Pef's Corporate Misadventures. =RK AN. This update is from Per on the Space Battles forums. It is posted with his permission. Floating in space, a million case from planet Farana. Zinsk Genpire world. I mused over the nav comp, trying to figure out how the smugglers did it. There was no possible way for a hyperjump from Farana to reach Dandoran, not even with Mark 1.0 drives. Which this ship didn't have. Unless they had a Samantha Carter, calculating a slingshot around a singularity, while in hyperspace. The human had been nor female, nor blonde. The body was now floating away, along with the skeletons of the former crew members. Wouldn't it have to explain the mystery meat in my fridge to some tax inspector? Fridge logic only works in movies. The route will remain another mystery, for someone smarter. Or maybe one day, I'll ask myself the same question, while inside an auditorium packed full with hyperspace engineers, and drain their brains for an answer. The nav comp still stated happily that a jump was possible, coordinates loaded. Fine. Trust in the Force. I felt a delicate hand touch my shoulder, but I didn't turn. Stealth procedures first. Turn off comms. Turn off navigation aids and gravimetric sensors. Reduce engine output to minimum. Start warm-up. Deflector shield set to ambient temperature. Polarize all outgoing light. Turn off gravity. And flick. Time stopped, and the stars elongated into streaks of light. My stomach did a flip, then turned back towards the spaceship's deck. Artificial gravity restored. We were in hyperspace now, and nothing except a lucky gravity mine would drag us out. Now Clarice. We need to train. Take those 2 rusted blasters, and go to cargo bay, I demanded, turning around. The girl was still holding her stomach. I'd have thought Kuwait would have gene-spliced space sickness out from their family genes. I don't feel so good, she complained, gritting her teeth. Jabruk Konji should calm her stomach. Or provoke even worse symptoms. We'll start slow. First dismantle, then clean the weapons. We'll fire them later, I replied amicably. Her face became even paler. Can't you just enjoy my body, like a normal teenager would? She complained, dragging her feet towards the hold. Maybe later. Survival first. While the girl was stuck with looking over her datapad for schematics and a blaster operation manual, I reviewed my own abilities. The force shield still came easy, almost like someone downloaded the ability in my brain. Which was quite possible, and with the number of agencies involved in my life so far, the culprit could be any of them. Too bad it took a fork in my neck for the shield to appear. The other abilities were self-taught, and it showed. My brain drain only worked to a measurable degree if I had lots of people with knowledge about a subject in my range. Less than 30 victims in my range and I got almost nothing. Probably a somatic symptom, since I started doing it in kindergarten, and those classes had 33 people at all times. The skill download worked only if I was certain it would work. The force would provide a temporary boost for any ability I needed, as long as I knew that a certain skill would help and asked specifically for it. Then there were more esoteric disciplines, which only sometimes worked, and I didn't know how or why. Reinforcement, structural analysis, postcognition, precognition, clairvoyance. I had to be calm and open myself to the force. Trust blindly that it will work, and sometimes it did. Or just use it without thinking at all. That worked too, for some reason. Telekinesis was the most difficult ability to measure. I knew I could theoretically lift or dismantle an entire Star Destroyer using only my mind. I've read about it, in another life. But for me, it barely worked on my own person. I could jump, and telekinetically guide my trajectory, extend my jumps or slow down a fall. Again, learned it while falling from a tree. Maybe one day a spaceship will drop on top of me, and I'll learn to levitate big objects as well. Probably not though. Objects in motion. I needed someone to teach me, and my Maya Luca sensei did a poor job. Everything came naturally to her. Let the force guide you, just go with the flow. Right. It had worked, in combat. Almost like my knife had a will of its own. But I never managed to even touch my sensei with my practice sword. She saw the force, almost like other people saw light. If I ever had to fight a force sensitive, I'd better stick to explosives and sonic weapons. Which are very, very rare. Almost like someone was deliberately restricting and marginalizing their existence. I did it, Pef. Almost nothing broke. I heard a happy voice exult beside me. Griff. I opened my eyes and checked. As expected, the rusted weapons didn't survive being dismantled. I started picking salvageable parts, till I had enough to assemble a working blaster, from both weapons. Clean these parts, gently. And don't use water or soap. The red liquid in the canister, I advised Clarice, pointing at the jug with cleaning liquid for electronics. Closed my eyes again, and tried to calm myself. I heard a muffled tchhh, then silence and short bursts of friction and splashed liquid. Good, she was trying, at least. What I needed was a speed ability. Something to allow me to aim and think. To plan and move at the same time. My hand took out a few metal bits from the floor and juggled them. Flick one up, then slap it, trying to redirect the fall towards the metal wall of the hold. Miss, miss, miss. Ouch. Maybe I should try it with eyes open. I did that, and checked for the last bit. Some kind of screw, embedded completely into the ship's inner armor. The back of my hand was bleeding and started to blacken. Speed achieved. Now control. Focus on the pain, Make it yours. Flick one more. The metal bit floated in the air, almost defying gravity. The girl was blinking, 1,000 times too slow. Make contact gently with the flying bit of metal trigger, then flick it. Time resumed, along with alarms. Hull breach, decompression. Please return to Corellia for repairs. The automated system blared from the ceiling. Ha! A certain railgun achieved. I looked down, selected the first flat metal bit, then walked calmly to the fissure and slapped it over it. Vacuum pressure welded it shut instantly. What in the 9 Corellian hells was that? The girl yelled, looking at me accusingly. A weapon, I answered calmly, dropping back in a meditative trance. At this rate, I'll die a virgin, the girl complained, returning to cleaning her weapon bits. I think this was directed at me somehow, but I can't figure out why. RK equals. Interlude Pef. In hyperspace, en route to Dandoran, a hut world. Again. Keep your eyes open, I yelled at her, as Clarice wasted more blaster shots. It's loud and scary, she yelled back at me. Oh man, maybe I should try to find some slug throwers. If she thinks blasters are loud. On the other hand, trying to deflect bullets would be much different than blasters' bolts. The bolts had a kind of presence in the force, making them relatively easy to intercept. Well, at least shots fired one by one, with random yelling and cursing in between. I'd have been the first to die at Geonosis. Bullet time would work, for a while. But the mental energy to remain focused was huge. And my other mind would take over. 10 more shots. Then we take a break, I allowed magnanimously. You said that an hour ago, she yelled back, and shot at my balls. Good aim too. Eyes open, anger driving her fear away. Huh? What do you know? My bantha prod glowed blue and moved on its own, deflecting the bolt into the bullseye painted on a crate. That's my girl. Keep shooting. I encouraged her, and she unleashed hell, firing 20 times in 20 seconds. Her energy pack pulsed a red warning, signaling a depleted charge. The last bolt hit my hand, the energy making my nerves scream and forcing my fingers to open. The prod fell on the floor with a bounce. You did it, I exclaimed excitedly, running forwards and grabbing her in a hug. You idiot, I hit you, she said, hugging me back. I know. Hurts like hell. Hurts so good. She stopped for a moment, as my obvious excitement made itself noticed. Pef, you moron. I told you I am yours, she murmured, as her hands glided down and grabbed my bottom. Had to break your block. The galaxy is dangerous. And hut space even more, I replied, whispering in her ear and massaging her back. Let's take a shower, she invited me, her voice an octave lower. Soon. Don't wanna wash myself in Zabrak piss just yet, I muttered, letting her go with a slight push. She blanked out for a few moments, going over life support systems in her mind. Everything was recycled on spaceships, but I guess she forgot. Moron, you ruined my last pleasure on this ship, she yelled and tried to brain me with her empty blaster. I ducked and came under her arm, then hugged her from behind. Hand-to-hand rating, -2. She still had a lot to learn. Shh. Life is what it is. Now, load the engine schematics on your pad and start memorizing. If you ace my test, we'll shower together, to save on water. I explained, massaging her shoulders. Tension rose, then fell sharply. I'll never be a ship mechanic, no matter what you promise, she complained, leaning into my arms. Study harder then. The rest of the crew will be competing for your spot, I teased her, then patted her bottom while going back to my meditation mat. Combat and aggression needs met. For today, I opened myself to the Force, and let it pass through me. My hand tingled, a sign of regeneration beginning. It was strange, almost like here in hyperspace, the Force was easier, helping. Perhaps hyperspace was an expression of the Force, like a higher circulatory system. Nothing I knew of the Force from my previous life fit with what I experienced here. No light side, not even a dark side. Just my own mind, fracturing along morality lines. How could Skywalker bring balance to the Force, if he wasn't balanced himself? Extermination of the Jedi kept going, beacons of light going silent in the Force, all over the galaxy. But this was only politics? Most Jedi were just religious authorities, cardinals imposing their church's view on the galaxy. Rarely a critical thinker among them. A mindset I was bred to oppose, even if it did work. Trust in the Force. Belief worked, because quadrillions of sapiens also believed, and made miracles possible. But the Sith were even better. They studied, they invented, they researched. Well, they used to. Until they went mad and started burning worlds. Palpatine was dead, and Yoda most likely too. The Force shifted and bent when those two monsters fell. A peak of selfishness lasting only minutes, then gone. Another peak of self-sacrifice, then gone as well. And Moff Sinch began forming his empire even sooner. Some separatist elements joined him too, grasping at what they saw as chance to power and survival. Too soon, I think. The Republic and the Separatists were still quite even. The current Sith, Vale, and Zash, were dormant for now, probably injured. But they'll be back. Monsters both of them, trained by the Sith Empire in its glory. I could learn from them, perhaps. I would survive, I guess. I sort of knew what Sith training implied. But the one to survive wouldn't be me. Only a shell, an empty body driven by base instincts. I could look for a Jedi maybe, plenty of those hiding from persecution now. Hiding in the shadow of the tree was not living anyway. Not in the long run. A palliative to true learning. There had to be a way for me. A near-infinite galaxy, just visiting all the planets would take billions of years. The Sith and the Jedi were mere toddlers on this scale. Somewhere out there, there will be answers. I just had to reach them. I had to survive till then. Get stronger and faster. Train myself. Find a teacher, maybe. My hand tingled one last time. Healing complete. Guess it was time to cook some Zabrak then. It's not cannibalism if he was a different species, right? A galaxy torn asunder. =RK equals. Part 4. Securum K-1. Gar HQ. Coruscant. Tilar Valentra dragged himself to the head of a long table that dominated the room and slumped in the chair waiting for him. He took a few deep breaths and sighed. The doctors might have been right in their assessment that he needed at least one more week of rest before being cleared for the lightest of duties. However, there was too much work to do with the Republic going to hell while he was busy napping in a Bacta tank. Valentra put the datapad he was wearing on the table, linked it with its inbuilt systems and called up the latest assessment of the Republic and Separatist industrial capacity. With the Corellian system all but lost, that left two major shipbuilding hubs in the galaxy. Kuwait for the Republic and Fondor for the Confederacy. While the former was a very heavily industrialized system, they were almost peers as far as building capital ships went. Not only did each of them produce at least half the cruiser and larger classes each side could build, they were two of a handful of places where larger craft like battle cruisers and star dreadnoughts could be built. Along with Coruscant, Kuwait was the only other system the Republic couldn't afford to lose. The same was true about the Separatists and Fondor. The single entrance into the room opened with quiet hiss and two people wearing identical green uniforms walked it. Yularen, Coburn, good. Come take a seat, we have things to discuss. Talar cracked a tired smile. They actually let you out already? Well quipped. I heard that you'd be on ice for a week or two. You know me, having too much time makes me restless. I'll take half your vacation time once the war is over. Coburn suggested. I'll think about it, but only if you take half my paperwork. Talar needled back. What's the newest catastrophe? Yularen asked after sitting to Valentra's left. No big problems. Talar frowned. One of our own is apparently playing empire building in the corporate sector. Zanji or something. He apparently has family connections at Fondor and has limited separatist support too. We'll have to sort it out sooner than later, before some other fool decides to follow that example. Coburn looked like he bit into something particularly sour. It's on Kenobi's to-do list. Valentra shrugged. Fixing the whole galaxy's on that list, but it won't happen before the Senate sees reason. Any developments on that front? Yularen asked hopefully. The newest edition of Palpatine's Criff the Senate just came online. Apparently it's going to be a bad day to be from Ord Mantell. Talar shrugged. He caught a bit of it before coming in the secure room. It couldn't have happened to nicer people. Welf smiled in content. Anyway, any news on Palpatine's front? Was he just a Sith keeping a low profile to avoid the Jedi assassinating him, or did he betray us? Jack hasn't been able to find anything conclusive yet. Coburn grumbled. Being stuck with overseeing the debacle that was Republic intelligence after his return from Kuwait wasn't fun at all. Siboney were effectively paralyzed while under investigation for treason, which left only the GA's own military intelligence as a working agency. Which meant that the Republic's overall intelligence gathering capabilities were crippled and would remain so for the foreseeable future. Investigating Palpatine for potential treason wasn't fun either. Jack's people weren't able to find proof, however that kind of work wasn't their specialty. Unfortunately, at this time Coburn didn't really have someone else trustworthy to offload the job to. That particular investigation was a very sensitive one, considering that after his assassination and all the leaked evidence of corruption in the Republic, Palpatine was viewed as a borderline divine figure by the average citizen and low-level functionaries in the government. The man's dead anyway, Tila noted. Not that the fact prevented Palpatine from stirring more trouble from beyond the grave. Nevertheless, the former Chancellor isn't why we're here. We have some choices to make and I need your input. As you know, our current capital shipbuilding cycle is about to be complete. I'll need recommendations on any alterations you might want to propose while there's still time to make changes. I'll want your reasoning too. Once that's done and Kenobi's back from the Senate, we'll need to plan how to use our newly built ships. Thoughts? We need more heavy capital ships. Kuwait's mandate has demonstrated that even crushing numerical superiority wouldn't be able to either breach or hold a defensive line in the face of so much concentrated firepower if it is properly supported. Coburn began. I saw 3 separate engagements where over 1,000 separatist ships engaged a Star Dreadnought with her battle group and lost. I agree. While the correlation of forces at Corellia was much worse. Yularen paused. From all the Rs Felix forwarded, it becomes clear that properly supported and led heavy capital ships are great power multipliers. Further, the battles during the last few weeks of the enemy offensive suggest that the strategy employed by the Confederacy is flawed. Explain. Valentra leaned forward. While the enemy does outnumber us by a significant margin, the war plan we went with was the correct one. In a large battle, our individually more powerful ships have a bigger impact than simple numbers or their individual capabilities would imply. When we've got large enough fleets to allow our capital ships to rotate away from the line of battle and replenish their shields, we gain a significant advantage against the separatist when they're deploying munificent or recusant heavy fleets. In such engagement, the enemy need much higher than the expected 6 or 7 to 1 numerical advantage or more battleships if they are to win with anything approaching acceptable losses. So the old axiom that big powerful capital ships are better remains true. Valentra nodded. In all-out war and heavy fighting anyway. We need lighter ships to cover all our space and as escorts. Coburn pointed out. That's true. However, while corvettes and frigates are food for scouting and police work, they have no business engaging proper capital ships. Yularen intoned. Besides, covering everything is a waste of resources. Light ships can't stop a determined opponent, and when all is said and done, most of the galaxy isn't exactly strategically important. Our current situation perfectly illustrates that fact. This war will be won at Kuwait or Fondor. It would hinge on who could keep long-term control over the hyperlanes. Besides, almost all important worlds do have their own defense fleets separate from the GAR. Most of them are already made from corvettes, light escorts and the odd cruiser, Coburn agreed. So we're continuing with Venator Mark IIs and the new Victories as the backbone of the Navy. There's also that mandated 2 Kuwait's building for us. Standard mix of escorts? Valentra asked. That's my recommendation. Yularen nodded. I concur, Coburn agreed. That's settled then. I'll speak with Kenobi and inform procurement. Tala leaned back and looked at the ceiling. It was high time he got a permanent replacement for Jar Jared overseeing procurement. Damn the Jedi for getting a good man murdered. What's next on the agenda? Welf asked. While we're on the topic of shipbuilding and industry, keyhole. Valentra answered. I'm not familiar with that designation, Coburn stated. Neither am I, Yularen said. It was a suggestion by Vale, building a secret industrial center to rival Kuwait and Corellia. In that vein, we need to discuss contingencies if our war effort collapses due to either enemy action or politically. Valentra winced when he said the last word. That was a can of worms he was reluctant to poke with a long-range missile. That's certainly ambitious. Welf whistled. Speaking about our favorite Sith, any news? Any new conclusions about Kamino? Besides the obvious? Coburn grumbled. Even if he went off the deep end, why did everyone just go along and bomb the planet? If that's even what happened. I'll ask him when he resurfaces. Or when we're able to push a scout to Camino. Talar shrugged. There were very many questions about what Vale did or didn't do at Camino. However, answers were in very short supply. Keyhole? Yularen got them back on topic. We've got some good sites picked up. Most are in the deep core, so they're secure and out of the way. We can have basic shipyards operational within a year. 2 to 3 for something with decent output, especially if we want to keep the place secure. Talar answered. I like the idea. Especially if the worst happens. Coburn indicated his support. Can we pull it off without compromising the war effort? Welf inquired. If we're careful. Talar answered. Jared was looking into it before he was killed. I'll see what could be realistically done and green-light it if feasible. Now, let's talk contingencies. Can we get a useful Senate already? Yularen muttered. The way things go, we might not have a Senate for much longer. Coburn noted. Already a third is either arrested, fled Coruscant or joined the Separatists along with Cathar. Our political masters. Valentra trailed off. This was a dangerous topic, however one that simply couldn't be avoided any longer. They're a problem. There. He said it aloud. Was this the first step over a very slippery slope? Talar wondered. The uneasy looks Yularen and Coburn exchanged didn't help. Valentra had been half hoping that at least one of them would disagree with his simple statement, even if it was true. They didn't. Part 5. =RK=. Detention cells. GAR HQ. Coruscant. Anakin stalked through his small cell feeling restless. He just got back from another useless interrogation, where he was asked the same damned questions for the 100th time as if the investigators expected him to contradict himself. Those inquiries were infuriating. Each of the questions was a painful reminder that the whole galaxy went to the gutter a few weeks ago. Palpatine, the closest man Anakin had to a father, was murdered. Assassinated by the Jedi. By the people he used to trust. Skywalker snarled and the meager furniture in his cell began shaking. He cursed and forced himself to calm down before his jailers overreacted. He felt Palpatine die. Hundreds of Jedi flaring through the Force before flickering out just here on Coruscant. Thousands across the galaxy. At least half the Order was gone. The rest were either jailed like him or on the run with the whole Republic baying for their blood. There were friends of his who were caught in this madness, feeling their death struck almost as hard as Palpatine's. At least Obi-Wan still lived. His mentor was changing. Anakin rubbed his forehead. Kenobi felt different through the Force. He wasn't exactly dark, though the light that Skywalker associated with his former master was muted. Grayish? Did that make any sense? A new presence entered Anakin's awareness and he smiled. Padme was approaching. To his senses she felt much sharper, more real than the usually muted clones who guarded him. It took his wife a few minutes to reach the cells and pass through security, and they felt like eternity. Anakin barely restrained himself from jumping at her when the door opened and the force field disengaged. Padme smiled wanly at him, making her scars stretch like living thing. She walked in and Anakin was hugging her, taking comfort from her presence before he knew he moved. Hey. Padme relaxed his arms and returned his hug. I've got some good news. That's a relief. Anakin muttered, too busy inhaling the scent of her hair to pay proper attention to what his wife was saying. You're being released into home arrest. My security detail is supposed to keep an eye on you. Anakin, please don't do anything foolish. Padme begged. Aye, that's great, Skywalker exclaimed. He couldn't wait to get out of that cell. Being home with his wife. He smiled. Anakin, promise me, Padme hissed. I'll behave, I promise. Anakin reluctantly pulled back to look her in the eyes. I won't do anything to hurt you again, Padme. I won't do anything that will get us separated. Anakin hoped he would be able to live up to that promise. While there was a part of him that craved to go after Windu and Teen, they weren't worth it in the end. Being stuck in a cell again helped him to straighten up his priorities. He wasn't going to go half-cocked on some crazy revenge quest or something like that. Finally he could go home with Padme, and that was what mattered. =RK=. Sib safe house. Coruscant. Awareness came back to Count Dooku with a sharp twist. One moment he knew nothing, then he could feel the dark side's heavy presence and he grasped at it with his whole being. Power flowed through his body and it chased any vestiges of lethargy he could feel. It's done. An older Rhodian grumbled. The man wore blue hospital scrubs and was leaning over him with a scanner in hand. Everything looks good. Now we just need to calibrate the prosthetics. Good. Dooku rasped. He was laying on a raised gurney locked at a 45-degree angle. Here, water. The doctor shoved a cup with a straw sticking out of it in the Count's face. Dooku glared at the man who was already busy looking back at the scanner, however didn't refuse the water. The cool liquid soon splashed over his parched throat. It was one of the best things Dooku could recall tasting. When the offensive man got the cup away from his face, the Sith looked down at his body. For the first time in months, Dooku had arms, even if they were made of dull grey metal and had a rough rugged look to them. Certainly not top-of-the-line prosthetics. Still, it was better than being a cripple. Dooku felt Windu's onerous presence and looked at the entrance to the man's bedroom. The Jedi was glaring at him, making the Sith put a thin smile on his face. His new hands might be rather primitive, however their existence made him anything but helpless with the Jedi around. How long before he's going to be useful, Doctor? Windu asked. He'll need a few days at least to acclimatize to the hardware. A more advanced model would have needed much less time, however that's the best I could get on short notice. The Rhodian explained. Good. Then we can leave soon. Mace grumbled and went back into his room. Looking forward to hunting Vale, are we? Dooku smiled thinly. He didn't intend to follow Sib's plan. Oh, they would prove useful allies while he pursued his vengeance. Vale simply had to die, however certainly not on the terms of his new friends. Dooku was a Sith and thus no one's tool. Windu and his handlers would learn that soon. A Galaxy Torn Asunder. =RK=. Part 6. Corvette Headhunter. 2 light hours from Mandalore System. Interstellar Void. Do you still think this is a good idea? Severance Tan grumbled. She was sitting on the bridge with Forge, the only one of her team who made it off Geonosis. The large Mandalorian shrugged nonchalantly. It's as good idea as any. What are you going to do otherwise, Sev? Go and hide? Play mercenary in Hutt space? A pair of soft blue eyes, which looked out of place on the rugged and scared face of the mercenary, looked at the Sith disciple. It won't be so bad. The Chiss woman sighed. You won't come with me if I go, would you? Finally my people have a worthy leader. One we faced in combat and lived only because he was exhausted. You told me so yourself. Mandalore called us back. It's high time I listened. I would prefer to go home with you by my side, Sev. Forge admitted. Was that a proposition? Tan chuckled huskily. What if it is? Vale might as well kill me instead of listening to anything I've got to say. Severance pouted. Kill both of us. It's a risk, I admit. My status as a clan leader might open us the door, but after that. Sev, both the Republic and Confederacy are after you. As far as we know your master is dead, and even if he wasn't, Dooku wouldn't be in any help. He would be on the run just like us. Forge grumbled. Besides you want to go home. Severance hummed. You aren't even trying to hide your emotions. Should I? You know how I feel. Damn it, Forge. You know, that's not really my name. The Mandalorian chuckled. It is. I fell in love with Forge. Severance pouted. You know you're cute when you make that expression. An empty CF cup flew from the nearby compartment and bounced off his breastplate. Very mature. You're one to speak. Boys and their toys. They're not toys. They're explosive devices. Keep telling yourself that, dear. Impossible woman. That's why you love me. Among other things. Ford looked over Severance's figure, which was on display in her form-fitting robe, and let out an exaggerated sigh. Tan snorted softly. We got off topic. No one knows where Vale went. I could get arrested the moment we step foot on Mandalore. That's actually a good thing. Severance narrowed her eyes dangerously. Not getting arrested. Touchy much today? I didn't get my beauty sleep last night. Severance muttered. And who's to blame for that? Forge gave her a pointed look. There's only one insatiable Mandalorian on the ship, so it's your fault, Tan said primly. One insatiable Chiss too. Details, details. Explain. Vertical bar. We prove ourselves useful. There's a separatist invasion to help with that. Once Vale's back, I'll arrange a meeting. I still have some contacts back home and hopefully they're still alive. If not, we'll improvise. That still doesn't explain how I don't get either shot or thrown into a deep dark cell. Marry me. What? You heard right. I'm not asking just because I want to, which I certainly do. You know that. Forge grinned. We're going to make a proper Mandalorian out of you. I'm very improper. Severance smiled slyly. That's a bonus. RK equals. ORR base. Valley of the Jedi. Location classified. General Garza and Master Perian stood next to the close combat training area and watched 2 platoons worth of Jedi Padawans fight with practice lightsabers. About half of them had individual duels, while the rest were engaging in small groups, sometimes against a single opponent. They look sloppy. Garza frowned. The Nexus might be able to give them access to the Force, however they still need to learn how to use it. Only the few who are actually talented might face a Jedi one-on-one in the foreseeable future and win. Jared shrugged. They're all volunteers. A force multiplier against regular troops and a decent countermeasure against Jedi or Sith. Garza nodded. We'll have to make up with numbers what we lack in quality. Her frown was back firmly in place. I don't like it. Our biggest successes came from fielding better troops, veterans, both regular soldiers and Jedi alike. That's a luxury we could no longer afford. We lost too many of our best on Camino. Perian seethed. He should have foreseen it. Vale was a monster. Burning a world he was supposed to keep safe in order to kill as many Jedi as possible. That was an obvious play for a Sith to make. However, that son of a diseased bantha had to go a step too far, didn't he? Turning Camino into that abomination to everything that lives. Gerard shuddered. The Jedi who survived, they were changed. Tainted by the touch of the dark side. Even now, Perian wasn't sure what to do with them. How long until they're ready? Garza's words got his attention. Them? Gerard nodded at the training Padawans. At least couple of weeks if we want to avoid wasting a lot of them against regular infantry. If we're talking Jedi, they'll need months at least. I can see that. Garza glared at the Jedi Master. I mean the rest of the trainees. I know we didn't send everyone to Camino. Of course not. Perian snorted. It's not like I trust the Confederacy. They're a means to an end. If we're very lucky, they might even be in a position to fix up this galaxy. If they aren't, we'll be ready and waiting. Jared paused. Thank you for kicking me out of my funk. He reluctantly admitted. I was handling my reaction to Vale's actions suboptimally. That's one way to put it, Jared. Garza snorted. You looked like half-baked corpse. I felt like one. We'll get Vale. For everything he has done, not just Kira. You took out the Emperor. I reckon Vale won't be a harder challenge. Garza pointed out. I know. He just might be a trickier one, though. We don't have the same resources. Perian admitted. We'll improvise then. With the Jedi Order scattered, all we need is time. Garza turned to look at the old temple where the Nexus was located. The Separatist will buy us at least a few years, especially with us supporting them. Jared smiled. We've got more volunteers arriving every day. Speaking about the Jedi, Garza inquired. I've put feelers through our network. I'll be talking with the Confederate Council too. Everyone we could snap will be a net boon for us. Good. I'll leave the Force-related stuff to you. I've got a military to rebuild. Garza cracked a tiny smile too. One way or another they would restore democracy and justice to the galaxy. RK equals. Part 7. Blue Ballroom. Trade Federation Enclave. Raxulon City. Raxus. How am I looking? Tresh Tilroth asked his personal assistant. The young Galamoidian carefully examined his suit and frantically nodded in relief. Good. Now that we're fashionably late, let's meet the crowd. Tresh beamed. You can stay out of sight. He nodded to his security detail made of commando droids. Roger, Roger. Security situation green. You can proceed, Viceroy. Jolly good. Another nod and Tilroth's personal assistant opened a side entrance leading into the ballroom. Tresh slipped between two groups of people who were quietly talking to each other and went to meet the guests of honor. Risa, "Dearest, you look fabulous in this dress," Ilroth exclaimed when he passed by Shadowfeed's greatest star. The Twi'lek woman sent him a kiss and a sultry smile, before her companion for the night pulled her back to the dance floor. Tresht knew that Zabrak from somewhere. Was that the CEO of Interstellar Freights Unlimited? It looked at him, but a bit younger. "So, son? Brother perhaps, or just a good cosmetic surgeon?" Tresht shrugged and continued making his way through the crowd. He excitedly greeted his supporters, beamed at people who he wanted to make business with, complimented guests who wouldn't know taste if it hit them in the face, like that human in the purple. What was he wearing? Ilroth had trouble keeping his smile in place as he examined the... Seriously, what was that? It looked like someone violated, then murdered a huge bathrobe before letting it to bloat on the sun for a few weeks. Damned outer rim Hicks. Finally, after what felt like eternity, Ilroth got to the guests of honor. There were 20 of them, all representing systems which just joined the Confederacy. This ball was in their honor. "Senator Silvaris. I'm so glad to see you arrived safely," Tresht exclaimed. Thanks to that overgrown feline and her friends, now the Confederacy had a solid, friendly foothold in the Mandalorian sector. There were already fleet and engineering elements en route to secure those systems from Republic aggression and begin building forward logistic bases for the Navy. "Viceroy Ilroth." Silvaris gave him a haughty look, then bowed. "Cathar and her people thank you. You are all too welcome, my dear. We couldn't do anything less. I'm just glad you saw the truth and did your best to stand against the Sith and their Mandalorian lapdogs. We remember, Viceroy. While most of the galaxy might have forgotten, we never did. We know the true face of the Mandalorians. We know the Sith. Cathar is with you to the end of the line." "Thank you, Senator Silvaris." This time Tresht's smile was genuine. "Say what you will about that woman, she and her people truly believed the Mandalorians, and thanks to Vale, the Sith, were enemies they couldn't live with. Together we will stop them once and for all." Ilroth looked around. "It is good to see so many of your neighbors sharing the sentiment. We aren't alone, Viceroy. I can assure you, there are dozens of worlds across the sector who could be persuaded to join us, for protection against Mandalorian reprisals if nothing else. I understand that we'll be moving in force against Mandalore soon? Our troops have a foothold at Sundari. Unfortunately they won't be able to secure the planet without heavy reinforcements." Tresht sighed sadly. "We're already fighting on multiple fronts in the Galactic East alone. So far all we could send to Mandalore was just enough troops to keep the beachhead open and enough ships to secure the orbitals above the capital. It couldn't be any other way because there were millions of bloodthirsty Mandalorians waging guerrilla warfare across the whole damned sector. The Confederacy couldn't simply bomb them too, because more often than not the bastards were hiding within largely neutral if not even friendly populations. Unfortunately, so far the Mandalorians were avoiding hitting civilian targets and thus pissing off the other locals. That was something intelligence was looking into. Our people are more than ready to fight, Viceroy. We simply lack sufficient equipment to do so properly." Silvaris smiled. "I'm sure we'll be able to do something about that now that we're allies." "That's excellent." The big cat purred at Tresht, sending unpleasant shivers down his spine. "Damn feline." =RK=. This is Ryloth Risa, live from the Trade Federation enclave in Rakshilon City. A perky Twi'lek exclaimed at the cameras. "Tonight, we at Shadowfeed have an exclusive coverage of the official inauguration of the Confederacy of Independent Systems' newest members." The picture changed to show a richly decorated podium sitting at the far corner of a cavernous room. It was flanked by large Confederacy banners with 20 different flags proudly rising in the back: Gwenny, Halmid, Cathar, Urquit, Mirian and many others harder to recognize. Today, 20 new star systems, 31 worlds join the Confederacy in our fight to restore freedom and justice in the galaxy. They do it after the last loyal to the Republic Jedi attempted to remove the corrupt government led by the Sith Sheev Palpatine and regrettably failed. While the Sith himself was slain thanks to the valiant efforts of Jedi Masters Teen, Piel, Windu, and Kota, the tyrant behind this war did not die alone. Master Piel along with more than 24 Jedi Knights perished in battle, while Master Kota was left crippled. Regrettably the status of Masters Teen and Windu remain unknown. Risa's huge teary eyes looked at the cameras. In retaliation, the Sith-led Grand Army of the Republic stormed the Jedi Temple, murdering hundreds of non-combatants, many of them children. Even as we speak, Jedi who chose to remain faithful to the principles of freedom and democracy are being hunted all over the galaxy by vengeful Republic forces. Or should I say Sith? Risa smiled proudly. While we in the Confederacy managed to overthrow the Sith who attempted to pervert our ideals and was responsible for the atrocities on Naboo and Coruscant, the Republic wasn't so fortunate. The true loyalists of Cathar and their various allies failed to do so in the Republic and thus put a stop to this terrible war. It's my sad duty to inform you that in a closed session earlier today, the Confederate Senate voted not only to officially accept our new members but to continue the war until any trace of Sith influence within the Republic could be eradicated. =RK=. Interlude, Pef's Continuing Misadventures. Author, Pef from the Space Battles forums. This side story is posted with his permission. Interlude Pef. Still in hyperspace. 8 days till Dandoran. I stared at the screen rotating the ship designer that I borrowed from Clarice Couet. She had nice toys on her pad. Let's see, a cone here, and a cone there. A flat bottom. On top of the ship, a hemispherical turret, containing a single turbo laser. 360 degrees firing arc, 90 degrees elevation, 35 degrees depression. In front and under the ship, another hemispherical turret, with another turbo laser. Allowing the turret to fire under the ship as well, much like gun turrets on helicopters back home. Power plant, the largest cruiser model. It barely fit in a 150 meters long hull. Okay then, elongate the ship to 200 meters. Internal space doubled, now I had room for 2 torpedo launchers and Mark 1.0 hyperdrives. What about escape pods and shuttles? No room for them inside. Outside it was then. For every meter more, the cost in materials tripled. Landing pads for shuttles. If wet navies did it, space navies would have it much easier. No winds or waves. Next armor. Cheapest variant, Durasteel. 1 meter in front, half a meter the rest. Add another layer of armor on the turrets. Half a meter of armor for the power plant and the bridge. Bulkheads every 10 meters, to reduce inevitable losses once hull was breached. The hypothetical power levels remained at 68%, if accelerating at maximum sublight speeds. Add 10 external flak laser batteries. Power decreased to 88%. 10 more missile launchers. Power at 95% now. I closed my eyes, trying to visualize the ship, strafing and firing at a Star Destroyer. 1 salvo, 2 salvos, and dead. But, a Star Destroyer would cost 1,000 times more. The sheer volume of a 2 kilometers long ship, and the amount of electronics and technology implied. Another simulation, 1,000 PEF destroyers, flanking a Star Destroyer. 1 salvo, critical damage. Another salvo, boom. Return fire eliminated 50 ships? That's 5% attrition per battle. Without using my torpedoes. My money would destroy 20 of their money easily. It will take more work, but I had a plan now. I wondered idly if Kenobi would buy my design. He was now in charge of GAR, and probably the appropriation funds. And he had a wife. The banking guild would certainly buy it, though I doubted I would remain alive long enough to spend any. The Hutt's the same, only I would be forced to fight some rankers first. Maybe I should turn back, and ally myself with the Zinch? No point. In a decade or two, the Von come. And minor empires would be swept away. Plus, when the Sith return, Zinch will be dead. Like, in a month. They don't like to share power. Vale was also Mandalore, so, no point going there. The galaxy felt a bit small. Corellia maybe? They might not have much industry by now. Mon Calamari? The squids were cool, in movies. But their ships were all works of art. No modularity, no efficiency. Strength through art. What is that, Pef? The girl asked, peeking over my shoulder. I stayed silent, just rotating the ship on the screen. A weapon, I said softly, patting her hand. You invented it, just now. My prodigy, she exclaimed, and wrapped around me like a soft blanket. I should scale it down a little. Maybe 10% smaller. Speed would increase by 5%, costs would decrease by 5%. I mused out loud, tapping gently on the length slider. Reaching the size limits due to the power plant. For a galaxy that has been at war for 40,000 years, the technology progressed a bit slowly. Or maybe every advance made was lost when the next galactic power came into power. Some force was suppressing certain technologies, like artificial intelligence or sonic weapons. There were myths of droid revolts. In the past, was the Force itself a supercomputer, created by some aliens in a distant past? I don't think Kuwait will build your ship. We like big, menacing ships, able to take on entire fleets by themselves, Clarice argued, probably being right. 50 million inhabited planets. The one who builds my ships will have a market for millions of years to come, I replied, saving the design and forgetting about it. Astromech droids are quite cheap as well. We could start a dynasty, the two of us, the girl rasped in my ear. She wants to start said dynasty right now, doesn't she? Let's wait on making heirs just yet. Staying sane is my priority just now, I told her, falling back into the Force. More deaths, large numbers around Corellia and Kuwait. Camino was still a wound in the Force, screaming of death and pain. Staying away then. Could I balance the Force mechanically, like a cosmic scale? Do a few good deeds here, a few bad things there? I should sleep, and wait for my tree. But how? Did you see any drugs around? I asked the girl. Some, yes. We're getting high? She asked, curious, smiling dreamily at me. Damn it. I did this to her, with my Jedi mind tricks. My own emotions, superimposed over hers. She was imprinted now. But how? I never had this ability, unless it was something about the scream. About Camino. I felt it, even from this other side of the galaxy. I went to prepare a weak dose for both of us, rifling through the possessions of the former crew, and balancing the mixture with the Force. Alchemy, my first recipe. The girl went first, then I programmed myself to wake every day, check the course, and fix us a protein drink. Our minds were melding, hers and mine becoming a single psyche. Our knowledge, our emotions becoming fluid and flowing from one vessel to another. If she had the Force, she might have resisted, but like this, not at single chance. The Zamia sapling was our only hope. Ashe equals. Interlude Pef. In hyperspace, 12 hours from Dandaron. The drug haze began to lift, and I woke up feeling very tired. I turned my head, and noticed the naked girl sleeping beside me. I lifted her gently and carried her to the shower, then washed us both, my motions mechanical. Damn you, stupid me. You had to give in to your baser instincts. Not that Clarice would mind. The water woke her as well, and she gazed at me with adoration. Took you long enough, she muttered, eyes dancing over my body. She seemed quite happy. Some things are unavoidable. I even heard that Skywalker was born without a father, I said instead, pouring liquid soap over her. Don't do this. Don't blame the Force. I can feel your attraction to me, she replied, hugging me tight. And I did like her. But this. Oh well, we'll know soon enough. Once in the shadow of the tree, our true feelings will be revealed. You have to clean the bed, I told her instead, then walked out of the shower. A muffled scream was heard a bit later, but I couldn't care less. My other mind messed with the nav computer. Or we accelerated somehow, as our destination was much closer than it should be. A few more taps, checking the last login. 12 hours ago. When I should have woke up. But someone else did. Schizophrenia now. Multiple personalities, diffracted from my main one. Desires given form. This one had been a lover. But what about the next? Will I one day wake up to find a horse head on my pillow? Find Clarice devoid of blood or skin? Find a thermal detonator reaching the last second on the countdown? No wonder the Jedi gathered all Force sensitives strong enough to be felt. The Force was a sickness. And without training, it drove people mad. Telekinesis on your own brain. If you could transmute chemical formulas in drugs, you could transmute biochemical receptors in your own brain. Alter memories, personalities, skills and reflexes. How could you tell what was real or not? I tested the bullet time, and indeed, it worked flawlessly now. No need for pain to trigger it. A few steps at hyperspeed, check on Clarice, frozen while gathering the covering on the bed. More flash steps, enter the hold. Pick up the cattle prod, convert the Force into electricity. The current worked naturally, seemingly unaffected by my bullet time. Blaster then, pick one up, fire at target. Step twice, parry with the prod. The blaster bolt moved slower. Slow enough to appear in front of it. I let the speed go, and felt the drain. Like I climbed a mountain, carrying another mountain on my back. But was the drain real? To hold a spaceship with your mind, it would take 1,000,000,000 times more power. I took a deep breath, and tried again. Then again. Soon the cargo hold was full of barely moving blaster bolts, floating in slow motion. Gather them like arrows, then will them to stop. Time froze. The current on my prod slowed as well, the lightning arcs moving slowly, like grass in the wind. Almost there. But not yet. I stepped in front of 1,000 bolts, and placed the prod horizontally. It's just 1,000 bolts. Masters on Geonosis survive 10,000s at once. Release. The impact blew away my prod, and me into the wall. But the energy was gone. No, not gone. Absorbed. Now, I just had to do the same thing, to my mind. Fracture it into 1,000 bits, then absorb them. I jumped and floated towards the cargo bay's door. Then went to help my woman clean the sheets. It was my mess to clean. My actions, my responsibility. The moron fragment of my mind was still me, I just had to accept him back. And maybe recover the memories too. The girl had to have been awake too. I somehow felt cheated, like I missed a great scene in a book. If that book was your own life. Bad Pef, don't cheat on me with my girl. Not cool, bro. Soon, the rest of day passed, in preparation for the hot deal. Green slugs, personalities similar to dragons, possible esoteric tech, biosentient weapons or such. In my memories, their core systems resisted the Vong on their own. But Zul the Hutt was not a prince. Smuggling weapons and forbidden plants. He should be manageable. Worst case, I went Sith on his ass. No, his entourage was the problem. There would be mercenaries and bounty hunters, maybe even some Force sorcerers. There were thousands of Force cults in the galaxy, and their priests had real powers too. Turning Force users into batteries for Magitech. Draining life and extending their own. Thousands of potential abilities, discovered accidentally over thousands of years. I wasn't ready. But then, I was out of time too. Without the tree, I would go mad and burn planets for fun. I flicked the comm open, just as our ship dropped out of hyperspace. Corellian freighter, identify and state reason for being in Hutt space, I heard on the comm, and a cruiser changed course to intercept, launching fighters as well. Delivery of electronics for Zul the Hutt, from planet Farana, I answered immediately. You are early, why? The voice asked, nervous. Planet Farana was invaded. I had to leave sooner, I answered, amused. We will check. Do not power up your engines, the voice replied, tone returning to normal. The cruiser also turned back, only its fighters remaining on intercept. Seems everything was good. A minute later, a holocom link began ringing. I answered. A monochrome Hutt regarded me suspicious. You're not my Zabrak, he stated coldly. I'm Pef, from planet Farana. The other crew did not survive. But I brought your cargo, I answered politely, patting my stomach. Zabrak meat was quite heavy. You think yourself clever. Very well. Land and deliver. Business must go on, yes? He replied rhetorically, then the transmission ended. A flutter in the Force, almost like hope. Someone down there was very glad to hear me. A slave, most likely. Corellian freighter, you can land at following coordinates. May the great hunt bring you glory, the voice spoke, and transmitted a set of coordinates. Damn it. What is this hunt? Ashe equals. Hutt planet Dandoran, Hutt space. Clarice landed the spaceship without a hitch, while I was watching and learning. Simulators are not the real thing after all, and atmospheric flight is tricky. An honor guard of Trandoshans and Gaemarans waited as the ship's hatch was lowered. Blasters at the ready. Come in, we have cookies, I exclaimed, motioning them inside. They entered suspicious, weapons pointing in all directions. Clarice was sitting on a crate, pretending to clean her blaster. Who is that? Why did you not report you have crew? A mercenary demanded, pointing his blaster at me. My pilot. Now, take the crates and get going, will you? I replied, ignoring the weapon. Zul will hear about this. Not according to plan, this is another mercenary commented, and started complaining in his comm. Yeah, well, many things are not according to plan. We just have to adapt. Probably they had eyes on my ship. They went to check the crates, and noted the blaster damage on the exterior. Merchandise appears damaged. Blaster fire, and recent to Trandoshan noticed, and marked some things on his pad. Man, for smugglers, they were really competent. I just shrugged. Seeing not response on my part, they went to inventory the crates. A few extra containers were removed carefully from the droid part crates and placed gently on some grav plates. Damn it. I knew I had missed something. Back to containers, kyber crystals, seismic charges. More and more goodies were arranged on grav plates and transported outside. The other crates were transported out with much less care. You didn't steal anything. Zul will be pleased. Now, you have to go meet with His Excellency, the Trandoshan said, tapping on his pad with speed. I took a hollow snap with my own pad, then walked outside. Another snap of the crates being loaded on trucks. What are you doing? This shipment isn't your business anymore. A Gammaran exclaimed, and tried to snatch my pad. I haven't been paid. This is insurance, I replied, breaking his arm with a flick of my prod. He cradled his arm, and looked around for support. Not even his buddies seemed to care, so he just stomped the ground and left, climbing inside a truck awkwardly. Proximity mines are armed, Pef. Good hunting, Clarice yelled from inside the hold, then closed the hatch. The mercs looked at each other with confusion. I just sighed, like it was everyday business, and hopped into a truck. Mercs boarded in all of the trucks in pairs, and we moved out, heading for a distant mountain. A palace of sorts, dug inside the mountain. Standard SOP for huts. The Zabrak is gone? The closest merc asked in a bored tone. I was hungry, I answered, patting my belly with a smile. The Trandoshan smiled back. Zabrak taste like young bantha, he mused, picking his way two big teeth. Oxinin taste better, I mused wistfully. He blinked at me, then back at the ship. You have strong guts, he replied, something like awe in his aura. Just imagine, a galaxy filled with alien species. It would take 1 billion years to try them all, I exclaimed grandly, pointing at the sky. The Gammaran next to me shuffled away, sliding on the bench towards the back of the truck, a hand placed defensively on his neck. I smiled angelically at him, then pecked my tongue, like tasting the air. He mewed weakly and hid behind his shoulder. Intimidation +1. Zul has a pet rancor, the Trandoshan said conversationally, eyeing me curious. Is it an undead rancor? I asked, feigning calmness. Of course the hut would have a rancor. Why not? Smells like one, at least, the Trandoshan replied with a sigh, probably disappointed I wasn't scared. Adult rancors are great mounts. They can speak too, I mused out loud, trying to remember vague images of Dathomir. The Trandoshan lost his smile, looking at me like I was a monster. Intimidation +2. We reached the palace in silence, the mercs too weirded out to try more idle chat. Zul, the hut was big. Bigger than any sapient being had the right to be. Is he a dragon pup, not yet evolved? The eyes looked reptilian as well. Pef, of planet Farana, the hut stated the obvious, looking at me from high above. That's me, your humongous excellency. I hear some damage was done to my cargo, he tried negotiating. The crates perhaps. I have hollows proving the interior is intact, I replied firmly. So you do. I will need those hollows deleted, he demanded, pulling a chain and making a young woman fan him arduously. She seemed familiar somehow, and very much present in the Force. A Jedi? Her bikini left little to wonder about. Of course. As soon as my payment is complete, I answered with a huge smile. His eyes narrowed. Trapdoor underneath, possible rancor too. The hut signaled to some attendant, who ran towards me with a cred chip. 1 million credits. That shipment was worth at least 100 more. Don't be too greedy, Pef. Only the tree matters. The shipment has been paid. Now, about the next thing on my transport route. I began my gambit. Delete those hollows, you promised, the hut argued, raising a finger. I didn't want that finger to go down. Yes. And so I did. Now, what could I want from you in exchange? I mused, looking around the palace for something valuable. Plenty of gems and weapons, even some armors, paintings, and statues. Almost like a dragon horde. Just one thing, Peth. You are clever, and I like you, but don't be too greedy, the Hutt growled, clenching his fist. The tension in the room lowered, and hope spiked from the slaved Jedi. Oh well, I could use a teacher, if it came for free. Fine. I'll take the fangirl. Pretty little thing, I allowed magnanimously, and started deleting the hollows. The Hutt laughed, like he was in on the joke. Once the sapling is delivered, you won't be so glad of her service, Zool the Hutt explained, throwing her leash at me. He clapped his tiny hands, and graph plate carrying an olbio tree was brought out, from an alcove behind the hut. So, that's how he controlled the Jedi. I narrowed my eyes. Something wasn't right. The tree wasn't force limiting. Damn it. I knew I forgot something. The tree was a life support for something else. I made a show of taking out my pad and checking the manifest. My pad says Zamir sapling. I see no Zamir, I gambled. Not stupid after all. Apologies, my young courier. You can pick something else, for your cleverness, the Hutt boomed, now his aura visible. Ah, the crate with grates on it. A lizard or such, very small. An attendant placed the crate on the grav pallet, next to the tree. I walked around the treasures, looking for something important. Plenty valuables, but nothing sprang out as force plot. Oh well. Mandalorian armor then. Quite rare and expensive. I pointed it out to the attendant and he ran to pack it up. Peth. You have a bright future ahead. I look forward to your great hunt, Zool said, laughing and waving me away. There was more I was missing, but I guess I'll find out. One day. I climbed on the grav pallet, next to my slave and the Zamir. Damn memories. I remembered it involved a tree, but not the specifics. And almost failed to get it. Peace enveloped me, pushing away the madness. I looked at the Jedi, trying to remember where I knew her from. Geonosis maybe? I muttered, too loud. Jedi Knight Bultas 1. And yes, I was at Geonosis, the woman answered, pointing at her shackles with hope. Good. I can use another Force user on my ship, I said, my eyes going over her body. Burn scars, whip marks. A bit too thin. She was mistreated, in captivity. I'm still a slave, aren't I? She realized, watching me examine her for flaws. Indentured worker. You have to pay your debt to me. And I need a Force teacher, I explained, and signaled the truck driver the go-ahead. I'm a Jedi, not some droid nanny. I won't. The Jedi are gone, Miss Swan. The old Sith rule now, Valen Zash. The clones are hunting the surviving Jedi, as per Order 66 contingency. Yoda is dead. And if I don't control my power, more worlds will burn, I said softly, hugging the woman to my chest. She resisted for a second, then relaxed, hiding herself in my coat, against the cold wind. The lizard looked from its crate at us, mild fear its eyes. Force predators, and too close, equals Ashe equals. Hutt planet Dandoran, Hutt space. In the shadow of the tree. My ship appeared in the distance, and I looked around for a trap. But no, seemed the Hutt kept his deal, for now. 1,000,000 credits. I could live my whole life on this pay alone. I could travel the galaxy, taking care to avoid hot spots. Visit Bondanan and enjoy the 1,000 pleasures. A bit too much money though. If couriers could retire on one job, there would be no old couriers. The truck came to a stop in front of the ship, while I took out my pad and checked for the next destination. Planet Merc. Now why would anyone send a precious Zamir to a planet full of Zamiri? Again, some kind of plot, that I stumbled on. The Force worked in mysterious ways. But not that mysterious. And I wasn't stupid. There had to be contraband of some sort involved. But what? And where? Clarice came out, blaster pointing loosely in the direction of the driver. He ignored her, pushing the grav pallet out of the truck. Then hopping inside and driving away. Let's see. The pallet, the tree, the cage, the lizard, the armor and the Jedi. Maybe her chains too. One of those had to carry something more. I checked the leash's handle. Electric shock, and toxin implant. Nothing a Force user couldn't defeat, in time and with access to the Force. I took out the lizard and threw it at the tree, avoiding the bite, with a smile. The lizard hissed at me, then started munching on some leaves. Then I took the cage a dozen meters away and started going over it, with the force. Secret compartment, check. What is it, Pef? A detonator? Clarice asked, ignoring the Jedi. No direct danger from it, in the force. It's something all right. We'll find out later. Let's leave hut space first, I answered, pointing towards the hold. The girls began pushing the pallet with Tree inside the cargo hold, while I came behind, straining to carry the cage. Kinda heavy, for a tiny lizard. More mystery. A minute later, Clarice jumped in the pilot's seat and we took off. Now, what to do with the exceedingly dangerous Jedi? 10 credits awarded to your debt. Here, I told her, handing her the leash. That's not how slavery works, the woman complained, fiddling with her leash. I swear, everyone's a critic on this ship. You will take care of the tree and the lizard. 10 credits per day. Force lessons will pay double. Assisting the ship in combat will pay triple. Free meals and showers, I explained, pointing at said shower. She took the hint and went in. I went back to the hold, going over the armor. Sadly, I didn't appear to have cortosis plating. Then again, those were worth a Star Destroyer. Cortosis was so rare as to be a myth. Still, over the Durasteel plates, it sported a light mesh, which I figured it was Mandalorian iron, or Beskar. The mesh was fused to the plates, creating a scaly look. Will do, I guess. Even lightsabers would have a hard time cutting it. Only problem, the former user had been a bodybuilder or such, to run around in 50 kilos of armor. I'll have to become stronger then. The left arm guard sported a sheath, which took some time to figure out. A black knife, way too heavy to be steel. Jackpot. This had to be a cortosis blade. The Hutt didn't know about it, I was sure. The blade was worth 20 million credits, or so. Not that any were on sale anywhere. Mandalorian armors like mine were worth maybe 500,000 credits. Expensive, but not on this scale. I slapped it on my arm, and the blade disappeared, armor plates rotating cleverly to guide it into the sheath. Now, let's test my speed inside the armor. Bullet time and start running. Almost as fast as without armor, so worth to wear it. Then, bang. I crashed into the floor, barely able to lift my arms. I strained to look around. Damn lizard was smiling at me from the tree. The force vanished, along with my speed and strength. So, about 10 meters then. Got exercise in the other half of the cargo bay. I crawled pathetically a few meters, until my head bumped into some naked legs. Great. My new companion was also laughing at me. I rose to my feet, glad that the helmet hid my embarrassment. Don't be embarrassed. Yes, our Miri are known for weakening even Master Jedi, the former knight commented, not even trying to hide her amusement. No oxygen for you then. You'll have to eat Zabrak, like all slaves should. You'll have to sleep alone. Our bed is not big enough, I answered instead, ignoring her charms and walking towards the Zabrak's room. Her embarrassment felt as appropriate revenge. This is my room? She wondered, opening drawers and searching through piles of dirty clothes. You just bathed in Zabrak piss, so you can sleep in his bed and wear his clothes. Though I suggest washing them first. I replied with a smile, then leaving the room at speed. Her reaction was not anger, but amusement though. Damn it. I'll have to work harder to rile her up. I reached the cockpit, and sat beside my pilot. Is she behaving? Clarice asked with a frown. She's in shock still. Give the Jedi a few days to grieve, I answered, checking for available routes in the navigation tabs. Another impossible jump appeared, taking us directly to Merc. That's not how hyperjumps work. You have to lose a dozen pilots charting a safe route through hyperspace, before a random new route is discovered. And it won't take you to where you want to go. Is this game quest logic? I was on a hunch. I took out my pad, and wrote Mon Calamari for a destination. Like magic, the nav computer remembered a new route, taking us directly to Mon Calamari, in one jump. Oh, I was so gonna abuse this. Departing from Dandoran. I closed my eyes, and fell into the Force. Operator, suggest destination per following criteria, not at war, shipyards, cheap repairs, recruitable crew, I demanded, already feeling the strain of madness gnawing at my soul. The search took some time, alien planets dancing in my vision. Nar Shaddaa sprung out, an orange moon, its entire surface inhabited. Plenty crew to recruit. It was likely 1 million people would sell themselves into slavery, just to leave the place. Will do, I guess. Another entry on my pad, and the fable route to Nar Shaddaa appeared in my nav computer. Strange thing, right? I changed course, accelerating us upwards at maximum sublight. 1 minute burn. Corellian freighter, what? The voice asked in ship's comm. We should be far enough. Deflectors on. I flicked the hyperdrive toggle and the stars froze in a rictus. The joke's on you, Pef. One day this won't work. Miracles won't keep happening. But for now, I expected I was in tutorial mode. My dear Sith genius. You found a route to Nar Shaddaa from here? Clarice exclaimed, looking over the data on the nav computer. The Force is with me, I answered instead, placing the burden of truth on bigger shoulders. Some Force certainly was. She jumped in my lap, expecting to be petted and kissed. Which I did. But only that. I had to know the truth. Come, let's meet the lizard, I told her after a few minutes. Your jokes aren't that funny, she replied, pouting at me. I wasn't exactly joking though. I went to my cabin and took out the mattress, carrying it with me to the cargo hold. No point on staying on hard metal floors. Then we laid under the tree, and just looked at each other. Even without the Force link, she was still beautiful. I caressed her face gently and she leaned into my palm. So, not a fake emotion then. Attachments are forbidden for a reason, a more mature voice spoke from behind me. Come, sit next to me, I told the former Jedi, raising up and patting the mattress. But, the Zamir, she said, looking above at the hissing lizard. Exactly. No Force here. Whatever you want to feel, without repercussions, I told her, patting the spot again. She came and lowered herself next to me, now less confident. Clarice hugged me with one arm, and I just relaxed, enjoying the peace. I could stay like this forever. We just lazed about, waiting for something to happen. Except for the lizard though, nothing moved. Thank you, Miss Swan said after some time, making me open my eyes. They're still dying out there, hunted like animals. Everyone in the galaxy hates Jedi now. I mused, wiping her tears with my thumb. I thought being a slave was the worst thing. But this. I can't go back out there, too much death, she said, her shoulders trembling. Oh well. Gonna need more mattresses then. Clarice, if you would. Bring some blankets and drinks. Seems we're gonna be here for some time, I asked the other girl, while hugging the new one. How did we not find you? You're quite strong. The woman asked, her eyes closed. Drugs, I think. I was part of some corporate special unit, given drugs to suppress our powers. Others went mad sooner, before we had the drugs, I answered, going for the reasonable explanation. I wasn't sure about most of my memories about Farana. I might have dropped in just before the invasion. Maybe superimposed on some poor guy who didn't make it. Too many possible explanations. How long, since you didn't take any of those drugs? She asked, going to the route immediately. 11 days perhaps. Though I spent a week in an alchemy trance. Made the trance solution myself, I said proudly, then realized she wouldn't know it was even possible. Sith alchemy. And you discovered it by yourself. What else can you do? A bit of everything, I suppose. Seeing the past, the future, the present. Obtaining skills on demand. Analyzing objects. Feeling thoughts and emotions of others. Fracture my mind. I replied with a shrug. And others more. I saw your speed. Only masters can move that fast, she complained with a trace of envy in her voice. Yes, and others. I can do everything, I guess. I just have to learn how. There is no emotion, there is peace. This is the first tenement. Can you tell me why? The Jedi asked me, opening her eyes. Emotion yet peace. That's a hard one. I think I love Clarice. I won't give her up, I answered, and the woman gasped, like I said some mystical thing. Who knows? With Jedi, it's all religion or politics. RK equals. In hyperspace, en route to Nar Shaddaa. ETA 58 days. I lucked out somehow, with both a Zalmir and a teacher. The madness was postponed, a single night sleeping under the tree reducing stress and banishing nightmares. Swan showed signs of recovery as well, even going outside the negation bubble for bathroom and meditation. Most of her injuries healed, except a deep burn on her thigh. At least she didn't complain, like the other one. What is the point? I will never beat a Jedi in a fight. Clarice moaned, and her feet went liquid, collapsing on the floor. I knelt beside her, using the Force to scan her. Physical limits at 60%. It was her mind giving up too soon. You are improving. Fighting hand-to-hand builds confidence, muscle memory and reflexes. It's not Jedi that I'm worried about, I explained, grabbing her in a hug. We can hire bodyguards. We have money now, she argued, not really believing it. She had bodyguards on Farana as well. Not a bad idea. I'll hire a couple. But you need to have your own strength too. So I can hide behind you, I mused. Eyed closed. The knight rose from the mattress, and came beside us, looking at me amused. Your hand-to-hand is quite good. Let's see how you do in a real combat, she demanded, pointing at my helmet lying on the ground. Right. It was my turn to get kicked around. Make us some lunch, if you would, I told Clarice, pulling her up. She cursed something in Huttese, while leaving the hold. I then placed the helmet on my head, and turned into a kick to the head. Damn it. Swan hit like a bulldozer. Even in my Mandalorian armor, I was thrown a few meters, bouncing from the hull. Good, good. Let your aggression out. Don't hold anything back. I howled, charging back in. Slavers need to be punished, my teacher explained calmly, kicking me in the groin. My head hit the ceiling, and I bounced down into another kick. I pay you salary, ungrateful wench, I yelled, speeding up a little. I ducked under the next kick, then rabbit punched her plexus. She fell down, gasping for air. And not a wench, idiot. They tried to break me and didn't. Swan muttered, pointing at her scar. The armor lent some mass to my hits, making me hit a bit too strong. Reduce further hits power by 20%. Still a virgin, eh? I told her instead, using the momentary bafflement to move sidewise and kick her under the knee, making her kneel. Her head sprung up, eyes getting bloody. That's it. You're getting a beating, you rude mongrel, she yelled, attacking me furiously. Excellent. I figured out her weak spot. She had amazing form, hits flowing from one another, changing stances, jumping and kicking midair. If I didn't have my bullet time, I'd be a schnitzel right now. The fight took maybe an hour, straining me to the limit. I was carrying 50 kilos of armor too. Play later. Food is warm, Clarice said from the door, making me turn and look at her. The apron she improvised made her look wonderful and homey. I could see her as my wife. A final kick crashed into my helmet, scattering my brains. Don't daydream and salivate during a fight, idiot, my teacher complained, jumping over my prone body and heading towards the galley. Right. The fight hasn't ended yet. I launched myself, parallel to the floor, and caught her ankle, tripping her to the floor as well. Don't turn your back to an enemy, I said proudly, blocking the return kick. You're learning, my young apprentice. More mystery meat? Swan said, pulling me up to my feet. Yes. And don't ask where it came from, you don't wanna know, I muttered, taking of the helmet. I don't wanna know where the meat came from, the Jedi retorted, swiping 2 fingers in front of my eyes. I am not the husband you are looking for, I replied instead, swiping my own 2 fingers in a similar gesture. She stared blankly at me for a second, then turned around and left. I am a monster, I know. But if Kenobi and Skywalker had wives, and Vale had one too, there was something to think about. Seemed risky though. What if the wife got injured or died? Grief would flood everything, blinding common sense. Better have backups, perhaps on separate planets. If any of them died, get 2 more. Spread the love. Next point on my list then. Obtain multiple wives, to stay sane. Shouldn't be that hard. A tinge of amusement flowed in the Force, almost like approval. Wisdom +1. Good to know you approve, dear Force. Maybe you will point me in the right direction too. Today was Zabrak, slightly burned. She has to learn somehow. We could give Swan a few percents in our company, if she stays, Clarice proposed amicably, while eyeing her plate dubiously. I'm not cooking for you, the Jedi replied, catching the meaning instantly. She will beg to stay anyway. Not like Jedi taught any useful skills in their temple. She knows no trade, has no money, no friends, no family, and a galaxy full of enemies. I mused, struggling to cut out some charred bits. I can hear you, I am right here, Swan exclaimed, her eyes flashing rapidly between me and Clarice. Yes, yes. She'd be better off if we leave her on some jungle planet. Hunting for food should be easier for her than begging for food on Nar Shaddaa. Clarice argued, catching my point. You, don't leave me on Nar Shaddaa, please, the Jedi pleaded meekly. Begging to stay already? Fine. From today forth, your debt is erased. You are free, Miss Swan, I declared rhetorically, posing with my fork upwards. Moron. This is revenge for me kicking you in the head, isn't it? The woman complained, somehow not satisfied with her freedom. Employees should be more respectful of their betters. Jungle World then, Clarice declared, slamming her fork like a gavel on the table. The Jedi hesitated, trying to figure out the truth in the Force. Really? She fell for that? I burst into laughter, bantha milk spewing from my nostrils. I got kicked in the head again, but it was worth it. As I left the table, I heard Swan whisper to Clarice, I will learn to cook too. Can't be so hard. I smiled inwards. Exactly as planned.